chance to recognise the smile.
Oh, really? Okay, single push hands, lesson 1. Just going to go over the absolute basics of the movement and the structure. So I'm not going to be teaching about applications and anything else that might be happening. You'll learn those later. So just get the basics right. Okay, rule number 1 is we stand in a normal stance. Never ever learn push hands from someone in a big stance like this. It's completely useless. We don't do push hands. The only thing I'll tell you apart from doing the push hands is that push hands is for learning about fighting. It's not for learning about pushing people over. This stance, yeah, that's great if I want to play pushing with Ben, but this is useless for fighting. I'm not in a mobile stance. I've got no groin protection, I've got no knee protection. I can't use my feet from this position. If I'm up here, I can use my feet, I can do whatever I want. Plus also I can move around my opponent. So I've actually got better balance being in this position than in a big stance like this, because you can move. This only gives you forward and backward balance, not overall rounded balance. Okay, so for beginners, as you notice, when I'm just doing it here, just pushing and talking sort of thing, I don't care where my feet are. My feet are just moving around all the time. But as a beginner, of course, we'll give you a structured position to keep your feet in, to make sure you're not going wrong. So all we do for the feet is, your rear foot should face your partner, your front foot slightly turned in, like that. So the hand you're using, you use that front foot forward. The heel should be no further forward than the rear toe. So don't make it a big long stance still, even with that shape. Make sure it's still a rounded stance like this. So that's the basics there. Wrist to center, imagine like there's an iron bar from your center of your chest to your own wrist. So never during single push hands in basics should this happen at all. Later on different things happen, we're talking about basics here. This, when you're being pushed upon, must be rock solid, never collapses. When you push, you must never extend, you just push with your body. So as we're pushing, you see if I'm going to push here, I only go to there. I'm not going to push on Ben and then further extend. I'm in a vulnerable position here. He could have grabbed my arm and yanked on it, broke my arm, any number of different things. Plus it's just a waste of my own time. It's like if I hit someone, bang, I'm going to hit him there. I'm not going to hit him there and end up over here kind of thing. So it's just your body that creates the movement. Same when I'm receiving. Here's the push coming in on my wrist. I'm not going to use my arm somehow to push him to the side. If I was a much smaller, if I'm working with someone much bigger than myself, my arm's not good enough to push a large amount of force out of the way. So I've got to use my own center to move around the force, like this. In single push hands, we don't move the opponent's force. We move around that force that he's creating. So Ben's pushing straight into my center. He's not pushing off to the sides, he's pushing straight into my center. If he pushes and I collapse my wrist, he's going to hit me in the center. So what I've got to do is, there's the force, he pushes. Now, I'm not going to do any motion of that. See, he feels now like a lateral pushing motion from my arm. What he should feel, if I exaggerate the principle, is, here comes his push, and it's like I'm literally moving out of the way of his push. That's effectively what I'm doing. But I've got to be able to do that by just changing my weight, not by doing, obviously, a big stepping motion like that each time. So it's just shifting your weight from side to side. That's why we have the stance like this, because if you have a stance like this, see, when he pushes and I sit into my left leg, I'm going to move backwards. Golden rule of fighting, never move backwards. Push hands is fighting, so we must not move backwards. Now though, I put my weight in my left leg, I'm moving sideways, so I'm still within range of hitting him. So that's what we're doing in single push hands. Basic structure, receiving structure is pung, just like in the form. Like what you should have learnt in lesson 3 or something of your slow form, like that. That's your pung structure. A rounded structure, a yin hand, like this, never a yang hand, always yin. Pressure's coming in on the wrist, and the elbow is slightly dropped. So that's pung. My weight is in my right leg when I initially receive the push, here. Ben's pushing hand, exactly the same structure of the arm, the shoulder, to the center, The only difference is he has a yang palm. That's the only difference in the structure. So the arm literally doesn't change throughout the whole sequence of push hands. So if he pushes again, see just there at the end, we rotate the wrists. So he now has the yin wrist, I have the yang wrist. I push, he receives, and flip over. So just at the end. If I do this, if he pushes, see I'm trying to turn too soon. I'm trying to change to my yang palm. If I change to a yang palm here, I've lost my center, I've buckled, and now I'm just using my triceps to hold off the pressure. Holding a rounded object to the force that's coming in, most of his force now will dissipate down through my shoulders. Whereas if I hold it like this, it's all pressured just on my triceps now. So you present a rounded object to any time force is coming into your body. So to create the movement, it's just a weight change from left to right leg, and you focus your center on the two corners behind your opponent or your partner. So if I'm focusing on these two corners behind Ben, there's my center there, and there's the two corners. So when I push, obviously, yeah, I can just say, okay, I'm going to push to Ben's center, but he's going to move out of the way. So I don't want to start pushing to his center and then go this way and follow his center. I want to push towards his center, then, see now I've done a 45-degree turn, so I'm facing over here on the side. Ben now is facing the corner behind my left shoulder. When he pushes, I do a 90-degree turn, and my center's facing this corner. So every time when you push, I'm going to face that corner, bang. When I receive, I'm going to turn and face that corner, like that. So that's all you've got to remember to get the motion right, to make sure you're not, for instance, doing really big circles, or obviously as we advance we can bring it down to a much smaller, tighter circle, but don't try that in the beginning, because again, as with everything, you need to work your way up the ladder. So, center to the corner. When we're doing single push hands, my push, as I said, we're not learning how to push people. Why would you want to push someone? You push someone over, you haven't done anything to him. Even if he trips and falls over, he's just going to get back up again. Our push is representing a strike straight into the side of his neck or into the temple. So when I do my push, I'm simulating a punch in slow motion for the training that we're doing. So Ben is therefore learning the correct body mechanics in order to deflect a straight punch. Later on, of course, we put various other strikes in, but this is the basic area of single push hands. So of course, if I'm going to throw a straight punch like this at Ben's center, if his center moves over there as I change, my punch can't change directions. Pushes can change directions, punches can't. So if he moves and I go like, that's not a punch, that was a push. Punch, if I, no matter what, just a normal boxer's punch kind of thing, as soon as I've sort of dedicated to that punch, it can't change direction. It's going to have to dedicate to that line of fire. So once you make that initial contact, there's the pressure. Once I've made that pressure now is aiming at his center. But if his center moves out of the way by him changing his weight, my pressure keeps going. See, this is where his center was, but he's moved out of the way. So you must adhere to that. If, for instance, Ben pushes now, he's pushing towards my center, but I get out of the way. If now he pushes and follows my center, I'd have to go back the other way, and I'd have to do something different. So don't try that yet. Later on, we take that in. So yeah, that does come at a later stage in your training for different reasons. But if you try that too soon, you're just going to be all complicated and your arms are going to be collapsing and you'll lose the structure. When you're first learning push hands, do it with pressure. We never do push hands softly like this. Push hands is about fighting, and fighting is not soft. So there must be a force between your arms. There's pressure between your arms. This is solid when it's being pushed upon. You should get a really strong upper body workout from doing your single push hands. Much better than doing any bench pressing or push-ups or anything like that. So what we want to do here is keep the motion going. Okay, so the pressure that we want to start with, as I said, we want solid pressure. We're aiming to get solid pressure. When you first start learning, don't do it too hard in the beginning, especially if you've got one really big person and one smaller person, because obviously the smaller person can't handle the pressure from the bigger person. So you would just start off just a medium pressure. So there's force there. You still feel your arm getting a bit hot, and you'll get a bit of a burn in the muscle, but you won't be worrying about, for instance, if I have a beginner student, I really slam the power in, then obviously they're just going to get knocked back every time, and they're never going to learn how to control their center. If Ben applies a light pressure to my wrist, and I can go, okay, yep, I can feel where that force is coming from, and I can position my body correctly to redisperse that energy down through my shoulder and down through to the ground. But if it's too hard too soon, I won't be able to learn that. So just keep it fairly, still strong, but fairly easy and slow as well. Don't start going like this, really fast when you start doing your push hands. Just keep it slow and steady. So this is all we want to do for our single push hands. So just to recap, wrist in the center at all times. Never does your wrist leave your center. Whether you're receiving the push, wrist in the center, and in particular when I'm pushing, you should never go like this. See, now I've opened my chest. Keep this locked in and twist. It's these muscles in here you're using to create the push each time. When Ben's pushing on me, what I want to do is, like I said before, I'm not going like this. When he pushes, I'm not pushing him to the side. I'm moving out of his way. So therefore, what I want to do is, it's always the pusher who's creating the movement of what we're doing. It's not both parties. So when Ben pushes on my arm, all I'm going to do is change my weight, and he's got to push hard enough. That causes my waist to turn. I'm not physically standing here by myself and doing this. I'm getting Ben to push on my arm, and that causes my body to turn. That's what we're doing in single push hands. So when you push, a good way of knowing if you're doing this right, when I push on Ben, my abdominal muscles will contract, and I'll feel them firm up as I'm pushing. I feel them all contracting because I'm creating the pressure. Whereas now, Ben's pushing. See, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but you can see my belly's sticking out a little bit. Now, if you watch, it's contracting, and now it's relaxed. Because Ben's the one creating the movement, not me. If I go there, and then there, see, it's contracting on both sides. There's no yin and yang. Yang when you're pushing, everything's contracting, and you're literally like, it kind of feels like you're leaning on him, but you're not leaning your body weight on him. You're leaning your energy. So I'm never going like this, of course, then I'm going to be off balance. Never lean on your opponent in any situation. However, I'm just absorbing his force, but with a straight back, of course, so that I'm never off balance in any way. Okay, so wrist in the center at all times. Never any movement from chest to wrist, so none of this and none of this. Just keep it locked in. Change your weight side to side. Focus on the two corners behind your partner. Yeah, I think that should just about do you for lesson one. As I say, just keep it really simple to start off with. Not too much pressure, and golden rule number one is never make push hands like a competition. If I start trying to push Ben over with it, he won't learn as much. If I'm talking about if Ben's a beginner student, if I'm trying to teach someone how to do it, and if I just start messing about and pushing them all over the place, or in particular two beginners trying to learn, if they're trying to beat each other, they'll never learn anything. We want to help our partner when we start doing our training. Okay, that's enough for lesson number one. We'll get on to some more with lesson two.